on the Age of Chaos. With the second era of collisions starting in the spring of 458, the Age of Chaos officially began. Nearly on top of each other came the Mirror of Isul, hereafter referred to as Darkmere, near the Ogres of Rok'Nhilthamos in what would become the Continent of Rainfall, and the Archai of Roa to the south, in the realm of White Thaw, and nearest to the Dwarves and Kadasa. In what would become the first fruits of their peculiar, distant rivalry, both the Darkmere and the Archai lay claim to arriving prior to the other, though it has never been dutifully determined, and let not either sway you it has. The following Cursed Frost winter of 459 saw the humans of Vos Demith planted against the Rowan Mountains of Kingsreach, mercifully close to the Elves and Faerthale. These were altogether the original Sacred Six, though the title was some time in coming. In the doomful year of 470, the tremors of the Age of Chaos broke through the surface. Plainly named the Year of Outbreak, the pregnant inertia of the approaching Decide War came full term when the Revenant erupted from the safe and overwhelmed the Ginto posted on Olam's Hill. This they renamed Bak-Arn, or Black Flame. Aside from the gross magnitude of their numbers, an attribute that would come to define their reckless and relentless method of warfare, the despotic lord revealed a shrewd and devious act of cunning. For the pantheons of the foreign nations had evil members whose appetite for iniquity was starved by the celestial boundary. Having benefited from dissension himself, the ravaging lord set a unique card before the near-dormant immortals, enticing them to high mortal status in exchange for rule, ruin, and revenge. This recruitment seduced to his side a few fallen deities, most notably Osari, he who rages of the humans, and the dead heiress, Hethys Krebgretel of the Archai. With these mortal but immensely powerful warlords infused into his newly formed and massive army, the ravaging lord turned his eye to Terminus at large. In the subsequent years, Kenosai 471 and Lost Sidrith 472 fell under their storm, while forces such as the Sidrith Vespers 472 and the Earth Mages of the Magin Key 473 allied with the emerging military Titan. But a strange fuel burned within the ruler of the Revenant, and as soon as his might was great enough to be divided, he broke it into 3 armies, one for each continent of the Sacred Six. Osari was to lead the assault on Kingsreach. Hethys Krebgretel would attack out of the snows of White Thaw, and the ravaging lord himself would strike upon Rainfall, though this was not yet its namesake. Yet neither the Remnant nor the Six had been idle during this time. In fact, the former had managed a deft campaign of sabotage and diversionary combat against their heinous brethren, most successfully in the critical year of 475. This served 2 ends of vital importance. First, the obvious benefit of forestalling the Revenant and frustrating their otherwise ravenous advance. But secondly, these tactics cast a fog over the delicate union that was forming at the insistence of the Remnant and between the Six. At the summit on Visu, a mist-soaked island in the midst of 2 converging oceans that nearly disappears for months at a time, the breadth of consequence behind the Revenant threat was unfolded to the leadership of each attending race. It was from this historic council that the decision to undertake the Sanctum Edict was made. For the Ginto carried these many years a belief that Etero's power and vision were so great he would indeed turn the world to darkness, as he had prophesied. But before her sacrifice, the patient divination of Janavi had peered even further beyond his furious gaze, and perceived a moment in the midnight of despair, when the flooding tide of battle would break beneath the sons of Terminus. This cryptic impartation was not at first enough to bring the six into one accord, but after days of fervent deliberations, each member planted the herald of their people in the crimson sands of Visu, swearing fealty against the Revenant until the tide consumes or the sons avail. Therefore did each pairing begin immediate preparations. The burning sanctum would be constructed in the petrified forest of Ka Kelhar, the Silent Sanctum, nestled behind a natural choke point in the mountain ruins. The frozen sanctum, buried in the storm drifts of tenebrious tundra. Each megalithic hulk was conceived with the aim of housing the races for as long as necessary, once they had bled as much attrition out of the Revenant and High Mortal armies as possible. In short, coffins to outlast the night. Thus, in 481, the Decide War, or War of Gods, came of age on Terminus. After years of smaller conflicts that felled countless nations, cities, and peoples, some forcibly joined with the Revenant, others devoured into extinction, the direct assaults on the three continents of the Six officially consummated in total war. The defense of each was long-suffering, grinding, and acknowledged to be futile. For, aside from Kazas, there was no equal to the High Mortals on the field of battle, and certainly no accounting for the mass of Revenant and their allies. What is clear is that Hethus Crevgredrel fared the worst, and found the teeth of Tenebrius difficult to overcome by itself. At Visu, Kazas was asked, "But what natural defense shall the frozen sanctum have?" To which he famously replied, "Tenebrius and Tenebrius alone." The Archai and Dwarves waged a choreographed campaign of elusiveness in shrewd tandem, denying the dead heiress an open field to fit with her numerical advantage. The effectiveness was great. Enraged, Hethus Crevgredrel was finally given an opportunity when word came that the frozen sanctum itself was located amidst the blinding squalls. At this news, she ordered the Magian Key create columns of infernal black flame to burn constantly, slowly encroaching upon the refuge from each side of Tenebrius. This forced the Dwarves and the Archai to face a traditional battle, which they deeply prefer but could not endure to the degree of their War of Shadow. Eventually, the sanctum was entered by nearly all. Kingsreach did not fare as well. The island has only the Roans as a natural defense, and while both the humans and elves made their hold around and on it respectively, there was little choice but to meet Osari's vast forces on the field of battle. Assistance in this came from the Moskag warriors and the Elvenin giants, as well as the enigmatic assassins of the Red Raven. But despite their valor, beautiful Havensong became the last bulwark of defense, with the Silent Sanctum hidden in the ruins behind. In perhaps the most mournful episode of the entire war, Havensong fell along with the human king Amon's soul, and the betrayer Osari demanded the entire city be wiped from the plain and carried off. Halting his army from any pursuit into the ruins, Osari personally verified that every last timber, stone, and hinge was removed from the scorched landscape and dropped off cliffs into the sea miles away. This took 3 days, and it was not until the effort was finished did he march on the sanctum. Rainfall hosted the most brutal fighting. At first, there was something of a valiant return to victory for the ogres. The legendary army of Broken Maw attacked the Revenant in their own camps as they marshaled on the banks of the frigid Northlands. After this ambush, the Darkmere waited patiently beneath the icy surface for an armada of Revenant transports, and set upon them with murderous glee, sinking, burning, and climbing on the decks of the silent convoy as it passed through the night. So fierce was their zeal that the ogres assembled on the shoreline, expecting some ships to pass through, watched in astonishment until their allies finished the fight. Not a ship survived. It seemed an easy victory, which under normal terms would have perhaps granted these two members a total triumph, which they likely would have not announced to the remaining four. Yet this was the army of the Ravaging Lord, and the only terms were his own. He unbound ancient monsters of the deep against the Darkmere, and soon their unparalleled advantage was forfeit. According to the ogres, he enticed the hounds of Wuxi to assault Broken Maw from the north, while a Revenant force marched up from the desert of Kaga in the south. The Wuxi vehemently refused this account, which became the initiator of the 7th and 12th war between the two nations. Unable to defend the twin or lone assaults, the ogres withdrew across Rainfall to Ka Kelhar and the Burning Sanctum. Thus, Etero's long-standing prophecy was becoming manifest with each scorching victory. In 484, Havensong fell. Rel Sirin of the Rakai was slain after sealing himself outside the door of the frozen sanctum, and the Ravaging Lord found a means to stop the magma moat flowing around the burning sanctum. It seemed that midnight was drawing nigh. Yet the sons of Janavi's vision would rise, and with them came a morning which broke the Revenant into utter chaos. These 6 sons of Terminus were warriors of godlike power and physical might and arcane discipline, one from each pantheon of the sacred. More commonly called war wizards, they are most easily described as high mortal beings of nearly pure supernatural ability. I confess their existence is contested by some today, so strange is their origin and decisive was their merit. With no warning of any kind, the dual terrors set upon the Revenant High Mortals with furious precision. Heathis Crevgridrel fled before her assailants, and is since so rarely seen she is thought perished. True to his namesake, Osari raged in ferocity and managed to wound one of the war wizards. But his might could not overcome the relentless heroes, and he fell dead on the very earth he had wiped Havensong from, as if he had merely prepared his own grave. The Ravaging Lord himself was not so easily countered. In a turn that should have given the 6 great pause, he chose not to face the war wizard, smiting loose his grip on Rainfall. While his twin armies on Kingreach and Whitethall were reeling, he withdrew to the volcanic Mount Ka Druhor in the north. Now utterly leaderless, the Revenant and their allies were chased off each continent, save for the Lord and his army teeming in the Volcano Foundry. In these conflicts, Avendir, the young heir to Emensol's throne, showed himself a leader of battlefront fearlessness. In 485, he and Kazas led the armies of the 6, and with the 6 sons of Terminus they marched on Ka Druhor as one host, intent on extinguishing the black flame forever. Yet even in this short time, the ravaging lord had grown in power and depravity. Too slowly it was understood that he cared not who survived, setting loose rivers of molten ore across the jagged terrain of Ka-Druvor once the armies had entered it. The forces of the six were divided and trapped, easily ensnared by the expectant revenant. Yet with their supernatural fervency, two of the war wizards moved directly to the ravaging lord, knowing his death would avail all threats. But after a furious melee, one lay dead, while the second was in desperate peril. Yet these were not all the mighty warriors to arrive on that day of days. Suddenly the earth shook, and one side of the volcano burst forth in thunder and spray. Out from the rupture flew Rok'Nhilthamos, the rain-born dragon whose dominion was over this very continent. Setting herself between the ravaging lord and the sun, she clutched the pillar Ka that towered in the middle of the battlefield and roared a declaration. These pillars are believed to be the signifier of rain-born authority on each continent, for there is one to each major realm. Rok'Nhilthamos blew thick flames over the two armies without regard for division. Her fury was awesome, yet before she could face either warrior, the ravaging king made his final move. With every malevolent fiber of strength, he impaled the head of the beast upon the pillar Ka, even as she loosed billows of fire. This moment was only surpassed by the next, to which I relent my narration in favor of an actual witness, the human signal bearer Marthos.
After this, an even more deafening roar erupted, shaking the foundations of the planet and silencing the entire war on all its lingering fronts. In this quiet, only the immeasurable wings of yet one more beast were heard as they dipped below the ceiling of the clouds and hazed over the battlefield, miles above us. This was the Dragon King, Rok'Nhilthamos. In a flash, his monstrous head pierced the clouds of the storm and ash. He crushed the ravaging lord in his mouth, but gently enough to flip his pierced body into the air, incinerating it with a blast of molten flame. Rok'Nhilthamos lifted his wings, but once the entire veil of cloud dispersed. His size was peerless, yet his form and color were majestic beyond compare. I knew him to be the king of beasts, but there I saw it. His claws dug into the peaks of the mountain range, and it dawned with clarity that he was about to act further. Even as our armies attempted to flee, the Dragon King drew in a massive breath to scorch all he surveyed in flames. Yet there was a crack and roll of thunder across the sky. A small glint catches the pool of Rok'Nhilthamos' eye, and the colossal dragon hesitates. Faster than his lid can blink, a creature like no other I had seen, though small in comparison, with one hand closed over the mouth of the Dragon King. There was a howling from one corner of the battlefield, but I could not tear my eye away from the sight above. Hovering thousands of feet in the air, it speaks.
"Blood for blood, King. There is no breach."
The Dragon King's growl reverberated as he replied in kind.
"Blood for blood, Emissary. Yet in the future, there will only be blood."
Drawing the skies over his ascent, Rok'Nhilthamos soared into the skies, cast one shadow over all the scattered armies, and forever disappeared. The creature that stopped his anger and saved us all was never seen again.
Such was the end of the Decide War.